Located just off the coast of Florida and north of Cuba, the Bahamas has the second largest English-speaking population in the Caribbean after Jamaica, and the second largest GDP per capita after Trinidad and Tobago. Simone Goldsmith is a project director for World Investment News. She was just recently in the Bahamas doing a section for Harvard Business Review that we just published. Thank you for being with us in the studio today.
Thanks for having me, Stan.
You're starting to know the Caribbean pretty well. You've been in the Bahamas, obviously. You also done a project for us in Jamaica recently, and you're going back to the Caribbean in the near future, probably. So, can you tell us about what sets the Bahamas apart from other countries in the region?
First and foremost, geography. The Bahamas is less than 1 hour away from the world's largest economy, so this makes the nation easily accessible by the North American market, especially those on the eastern seaboard. Obviously, this lends itself very well to a vibrant tourism sector and a very dynamic second home market. Obviously, the Bahamas is also an archipelago. It's comprised of 700 islands and keys. So obviously the layout of these islands present immense investment opportunities, whether it be in finance or tourism or industry. Other factors that are noteworthy are the very high quality of life that the Bahamas presents, and also the fact that the Bahamian dollar is pegged to the US dollar.
You were mentioning tourism and finance, which the Bahamas has a reputation for in both of those areas. Let's start with tourism. Can you give us an overview of the tourism sector?
Sure. Tourism's always been the mainstay of the Bahamian economy. Today it contributes some 75% to the country's GDP and employs approximately 60% of the country's population, which stands at around 600,000. Since time immemorial, the country has attracted a very high-end tourist, but still today it also attracts millions of cruise ship passengers every year. When I was in the Bahamas, I met with the tourism minister, Obadiah Wilshcombe, and he feels that the story of the Bahamas isn't being effectively told. He drew on the country's history of piracy, the important role that a former leader in the Bahamas played in the release of Nelson Mandela, and so certainly the country and the ministry are working to try and develop their tourism products. They're doing this through business tourism, through religious tourism, sport tourism, and certainly cultural and heritage tourism. For instance, they have a famous street parade called Junkanoo, which traditionally takes place at the very end, the very beginning of each year, but they are creating events mid-year to cater for the tourists.
So these are interesting times for the Caribbean with the normalization of the relationship between the US and Cuba and the opening of tourism from the US to Cuba, which is expected to have ripple-out effects throughout the Caribbean. How do you see that affecting the Bahamas?
Well, I actually spoke to the Minister of Tourism about this, and he certainly is unfazed about the opening of Cuba to the American market. He recognises that Cuba has a story and a specific history, but certainly that the story and history of the Bahamas is very different. He also recognises that the mystique of Cuba will always be a draw card for tourists, but that the Bahamas also has things that Cuba doesn't have, for instance, casinos. Nevertheless, he did say that he is working with the Cuban government, Cuban Ministry of Tourism, to create a multi-destination marketing strategy. So tourists essentially get 2 trips, 2 experiences for the price of 1. So essentially, as it is the way today, tourists who visit the Bahamas will then go on to Cuba or vice versa.
So moving on to the finance sector, it has gone through a lot of changes in recent years with a contraction of the banking sector, but still a very reliable trust product, which obviously has a lot to do with the taxation framework in the Bahamas. Now, unfortunately, the Bahamas has had this reputation in the past, at least, of being a tax haven, but they've been working a lot to address that issue. So what can you tell us about what they've been doing on that front?
Well, for starters, as you say, for 80-odd years, the Bahamas has been one of the world's foremost financial services jurisdictions, thanks to its low or no tax regime. Nevertheless, as you said, there have been changes, international pressures, specifically from the US and Europe. means that the Bahamas is more than ever dedicated to ensuring that it's not business at any cost. They're only after compliant business, and they have entities such as the Securities Commission of the Bahamas and the Insurance Commission of the Bahamas, which is there to supervise and regulate this sector. We did meet with the Minister of Financial Services, Hope Strawn, and she did say that given the increasing competition both in the Caribbean and around the world, they are focused and committed to developing new products and targeting niche markets and other geographical markets such as Latin America and Asia. Some of the products they have come up with are smart funds, icon funds, and as you said, the trust product is very well established in the Bahamas.
We were mentioning the two main pillars of the Bahamian economy, which are tourism and finance, but the Bahamas is trying to diversify that economy. What are they doing exactly to develop that, and where do you see it going in the near future?
The country is actually in the process of developing its first ever National Development Plan, Vision 2040, and central to this is the intention to diversify the country's economy. There is a strong focus on the maritime sector. The Bahamas does have the 5th largest cruise ship registry in the world, and also industry. The city of Freeport, which is on Grand Bahama Island, is the industrial and maritime capital of the Bahamas. This city is the 2nd most populous city in the Bahamas, and it is the closest Bahamian island to the US. It does boast the deepest man-made harbour in the Western Hemisphere, and it is home to, for example, a very large pharmaceutical exporting company that makes drugs to help HIV positive people. Another sector that the government is focusing on is agriculture. It contributes only 5% to GDP, so the Minister of Agriculture is determined to make this another pillar of the economy. One of his biggest achievements, he told me, is the creation of a agriculture school called BAMSI. It's in its 2nd year at the moment, and that serves to produce enough food to feed the Bahamas. At present, they import 80% of their food, which costs $1 billion every year, and means they only have 3 months' worth of food supplies. So that's a very exciting development in the Bahamas.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So the section that Simone was working on when she was in the Bahamas has just been published in Harvard Business Review in the July and August edition. We'd like to thank a number of people who helped us to develop this section. Those include Prime Minister Perry Christie, Financial Services Minister Hope Strawn, Tourism Minister Obadiah Welchcombe, and the Bahamas Consul General to New York, Forrester Carroll. For more information and to read the full interviews of the leaders and decision makers that we met while we were in the Bahamas, head to our website. That's www.wine.com. That's WINNE for World Investment News. You can also subscribe to our Twitter and Facebook accounts. And please follow us on YouTube for more content. I'm Stan Aron, Editor-in-Chief at World Investment News.
And I'm Simone Goldsmith. Thank you.
Thank you very much.